We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 86 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a 3rd grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this in a chance, number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 of our 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. This is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Good afternoon on the West Coast. Good afternoon in the mountain. Good afternoon in the central. Good afternoon on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Reparationist Perspective, bringing you those Freedmen hot topics and making the case for reparations, making the case for weaponizing our vote, socializing our suffering. And this afternoon, family, I just got off a live about our beautiful brother Amir Locke, who was executed in Minneapolis, akin to Dante Wright, akin to Mr. George Floyd, because my heart was heavy and I had to, bring on the protesters in solidarity with their outrage. And that was a prior segment that I just jumped off of to be here with you at this 3:00 hour. Forgive me. I see you, Herb Saint. Thank you for joining the live. And for those of you who are tuning in from Facebook and Twitter, I thank you so much for joining the live. Please like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. I am being shadow banned, so it makes it difficult for people to find this very, very important broadcast that we need now more than ever as part of the new Black media. I'm trying out different ways to come to you while I'm working before I pick up my daughter, because truthfully, a lot of what I'm sharing with you is traumatizing for her. I was just sharing on my earlier live about how freaked out I was. Yesterday, she wanted to go to a party with some friends, and it was over in a little bit of a sketchy part of LA. They were taking a party bus. No fault of the kids who live there, This is what they can afford. And so you're torn as a mother between allowing your children to go out and have a good time as seniors, as teenagers. They should be afforded that without me pushing the panic button. But I don't remember my mom being this panicked, when my daughter, when she allowed us to go out to have a good time with friends. And I believe she, as a senior, she should be afforded an opportunity to party with her friends and enjoy life. But this is the ethno-genocide season. I mean, it's never stopped. It's just being televised. Of freedmen. My heart goes out to Amir Locke's family. But it's got all of us on pins and needles, because instead of the Biden administration giving us the necessary protections under the EMMITT Anti-Lynching Act and the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, here we are sitting ducks. I mean, the young brother was wrapped into his blankets in a deep sleep, as he should have been afforded in his own home. And they come in there with the keys silently tipping up on him, kicking the couch, and then make it his fault that he was trying to defend himself. He was trying to stand his own ground in his own home, not knowing who this was, jarring him out of what was a peaceful sleep. So let me share my screen so we can get through these topics, because like I said, I really am trying to find a way in between court to come to you live more often, because there's just so many stories to break through a Freedman lens. And I'm trying to do so before I have to pick up my daughter from track practice. I want her to be happy, and I don't want her to take on the burdens of this very cruel country with 3 Ks that clearly hates the power of our Blackness. I want her to be unimpeded by this burden that I carry every day as her mother. I don't want that burden to become hers too soon. So I'm trying to get these lives in before she rings my phone to tell me to please come and get her. That way she can laugh and giggle and be a teenager. So that's why I'm coming to you at this odd hour of the day. But let's get into it. Let me share my screen. Woo! This is a lot, y'all. Now they want to make it legal to execute us in Missouri. This is what happens when you have no federal protections. Okay, so let me see which one. Please like, share, subscribe. Thank you for joining the live. Please like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications while I queue up my first article. Let's go right into it. This is Missouri's Bill 666. It ain't no maybe a deal with the devil. It is a deal with the devil. Okay. So St. Louis, they go into this, has many perks to it. There's a phenomenal zoo, a bar on the, listen, I want to keep this title here. Let me share it. Get back to you guys. Hold on 1 second so I can make sure you can see it and me as I go through this. Hold on. No. I hate these ads that keep running in these articles. They're getting on my last nerve. But I want to, let me stop. Okay, so I want to go through this bill with you guys to give you some insight as to how they're trying to legalize executing us with immunity. Okay, this is going on right now, real time. And this is where we have to get active, family. We must get active. Okay, so I want to leave that header there while I scroll through. So it says St. Louis has many perks to it. There's a phenomenal zoo, a bar on the loop that is heavy pours for affordable prices. And if Senate Bill 666, yes, that's the actual number, gets passed, you can earn your own teardrop tattoo. Proponents of the bill describe it as a way to strengthen the castle doctrine, which apparently was too weak, while those in opposition refer to it as the Make Murder Legal Act. In short, the law would create a presumption that people who use force against another person, deadly included, reasonably did so in order to defend themselves. Now, that doesn't mean Black people, family. Let's get into it. Hold on one second. That absolutely does not mean us. I want to share a quick video from a brother over at TYT. Let me bring it up.
There's a bill.
Hold on, fam. Get over here and I'm going to share this video with you guys so you can hear. What's up, Satra Del Rey 360? I see you, fam. Let me share my screen yet again because I want this brother to get into it, and then we'll chop it up. Just a second. It goes by a little bit faster than me sitting up here reading this to you. Stand by. Please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. And thank you so much for joining the live. Here we go.
Is an actual bill that would protect murderers for lynching Black people. The Missouri bill is 666. That's the number of the bill. I kid you not. A bill centered on what they call self-defense is making its way through the Missouri state legislature, has sparked significant outrage for its consequences, which critics say would allow for the murder of Black people. It would allow it to be legal. Let's put up a picture of the lawmaker behind this. Let's put his picture up. His name is Eric Burleson. He sponsored the bill. It's a Senate bill. Missouri Senate Bill 666. Yes, really. Is being described by its Republican sponsor as an effort to loosen gun laws in the state, because obviously Missouri needs looser gun laws. But a top prosecutor in Missouri has said the bill, if it is enacted, would shield killers from prosecution if they simply claim self-defense, giving the state its own unique spin on the controversial stand your ground laws sprinkled around the country. A former congressional candidate took it a step further and suggested the legal lynching of Black men would ensure if Missouri General Assembly advances the bill. Okay? The bill, literally, according to the sponsor, it just stops overzealous prosecutors when somebody is accused of murder. Lindsey Simmons, who was a candidate in the 2020 elections for Missouri Congress, called out the bill for what it is. He said, and I quote, Senate Bill 666 makes Missouri a safe haven for the lynching of Black men. Simmons wrote Tuesday in a Twitter thread before adding later, this bill is in direct response to the murder of AHMAUD Arbery, the reckless actions of the McCloskeys, and we're gonna get to that, plus the sham that was the Rittenhouse trial, there is no doubt. Stoddard County prosecuting attorney Russ Oliver also blasted Senate Bill 666 as effectively being the, and I quote, Make Murder Legal Act. Oliver said, making the bill a law would absolutely create chaos in the state of Missouri and automatically have the presumption of self-defense in every single assault and every single murder in the entire state. Now, remember the McCloskeys? Let's put their pictures up. wielded an automatic rifle during a BLM protest. They were just walking past his home. They weren't bothering him. He just came outside with a gun. Well, he was charged with a crime. It was a slap on the wrist. The bill before the Senate now turns the council doctrine into a bar to prosecution. McCloskey, a current candidate for US Senate, said, "We were shocked to find out when we were charged that the council doctrine can only be raised as an affirmative defense," he added. "You have to have the jury decide the issue of whether or not you committed a crime." Yeah, that's how it's supposed to go. And then whether or not the council doctrine provides you with the defense. That's backwards. Now remember, these are lawyers, okay? He's an attorney. Now some of you may say, well, Doc, I get it, it's a bad bill. How is it racist? Let me show you the racist implication of the bill. The stand your ground laws, those are racist too. You know why? Because over 90% of the successful use of stand your ground laws have all benefited white males or white females. When black people implement the stand your ground protocol, the law in their state, they are prosecuted at a level of 92%. When whites, it works the other way around. That's your racial component. Remember, prosecutorial discretion still matters. Now, in this case, what this bill would do, it would literally presume that you are acting in self-defense even if you have murdered somebody. Wow. Thoughts?
Yeah. No, and it's incredibly racialized. And we know, one of the first murders that sparked the BLM movement was the murder of Trayvon Martin in Florida by George Zimmerman, who, got off on the stand your ground law. But there was a scuffle in that case. But in this case, you could imagine in places like Georgia, Ahmaud Arbery's killers would not have gotten off. Would have gotten off, excuse me. They would have not have been convicted. The last thing I'll say on this is lynching. There's not enough anti-lynching laws in this country. In fact, the first anti-lynching law was just passed last year, 2020,
Yep.
which basically says, it's illegal to do mob justice on people you think committed a crime or you're afraid of, and 9 times out of 10, Black Americans. Yep. So it's just to think that we're over that period. That would never happen again. Look at the cases that are before us, and we've named them, on how this kind of vigilantism is creeping back into becoming normalized. And unless we do something about it, beyond just this one anti-lynching law, we're done for. It's scary. I'm just scared.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to pay attention to policy, because what they're allowing here is their culture of corruption, racial bigotry, systemic oppression to be codified in the new legislation they are trying to get passed. We know it historically existed. We know that it has been part of the DNA of our country. And we thought we were working ourselves out of it, away from it, opposite of it. But now you see this surge of bills being presented that are obviously racist at its core.
Okay, let me give some correction to what you just saw. We don't have any federal protections on this issue concerning the anti-lynch bill that was renamed the EMMITT Anti-Lynch Act. This thing has kind of been playing a ping pong, and I want to get to another article to share with you what I'm talking about here. It's been going back and forth, and the last time I read, Rand Paul was the only one that wasn't for it, but he raised some important concerns about it. That I think the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act addresses. Let me get to it just a second. Anti-lynching bill stalls in Senate as emotions run high. This was an NBC News article. Let's see here. Let me see if I can share my screen with you guys again. Hold on. NBC News. Let's share this. Okay, so here you have this article here that speaks on it. Now, this article was it's dated June 5th, 2020. And so what you have is a Senate impasse over a widely backed bill to designate lynching as a federal hate crime. It boiled over on Thursday in an emotional debate cast against a backdrop of widespread protest over police treatment of African Americans. Raw feelings were, oh my goodness. Hold on one second, family. Hello? Oh, Lord. Excuse me. Freedman life, y'all. I work in the courts from home. Just a second. Let me try to put this sound on silent so I can finish uninterrupted. Okay, it's on vibrate. I'm glad that wasn't my daughter. I don't have to stop the thing midstream. Just testing out when I can get to you guys live more often. It's a challenge. Freedman life. Okay, back to this. So it was an emotional debate cast against the backdrop of widespread protest over police treatment of, I would say, mistreatment of African Americans. Raw feelings were evident as Senator Rand Paul, who is single-handedly holding up the bill despite letting it pass last year, sought changes to the legislation as a condition of allowing it to pass. But the Senate's two Black Democrats, Cory Booker of New Jersey and Kamala Harris of California, protested, saying the measure should pass as is. The debate occurred as a memorial service was taking place for Mr. George Floyd, a Minneapolis man who died after a police officer kneeled on his neck for almost 9 minutes, sparking the protests that have convulsed the nation. The legislative effort to make lynching a federal hate crime punishable by up to life in prison comes 65 years after 14-year-old EMMITT Till was lynched in Mississippi and follows dozens of failed attempts to pass anti-lynching legislation. The Senate unanimously passed virtually identical legislation last year. The House then passed it by a sweeping 410-4 vote in February, but they renamed the legislation for Till. The sole change, the only change that returned the measure to the Senate. You see, this is what I'm having a hard time with. If everything was signed, sealed, delivered, why do you have to bother the name of the damn thing? It was done. This one change, after all these years fighting for this, gave it back to the Senate. This was in 2020, before Biden and Harris took office. It was a done deal, and they changed it to Till. Why did the House, democratically run, change the name? Back to the text. Black lives have not been taken seriously as being fully human and deserving of dignity, and it should not require a maiming or torture in order for us to recognize a lynching when we see it, said Harris. Paul, who has a history of rankling colleagues by slowing down bills, said the legislation was drafted too broadly and could define minor assaults as lynching. He also noted that murdering someone because of their race is already a hate crime, but it's not enforced when it comes to freedmen. It's not enforced when it comes to Black people by and large. It's not enforced. And you see how hard it is for us to get a hate crime? Look at what's happening right now with trying to, bring the McMichaels and Bryant to justice for the hate crime against AHMAUD Arbery. The attorney lied to the Department of Justice and said that it was fine with the Arberies to, give these fools an easier time in a federal prison. And then when she was busted, this Haitian immigrant, I do believe, she's a Black immigrant. When the chick was busted, she just says, well, I felt they withdrew, their hate crime. They were going to actually go ahead and be tried on the hate crime. They admitted to it as a hate crime and then rescinded it because they don't get to luxuriate in federal prison for life. And a Black woman, a Black immigrant, did this to these Arberies, to freedmen. So this Mickey Ficky, because they changed the name to Till, it kicked it back to the Senate where it stalled with Rand Paul. And he's sitting up here talking about it's defined too broadly. I don't think it's broad enough. I'll get into it. He said the Senate should make other reforms such as easing qualified immunity, rules that shield police officers from being sued. You know what? This is a bunch of malarkey. Let me go to, I'm going to keep that there while I go to my other articles to show you how it's not broad enough. So this is HR 55, EMMITT Till Anti-Lynching Act. We didn't need a name change. We need this to be done already. I don't think Mr. Till minds that it was a name for him. I think he would prefer that the damn thing gets passed into law. So it says here, offenses involving lynching. Whoever, whether or not acting under color of law, willfully acting as part of any collection of people, assembled for the purpose and with the intention of committing an act of violence upon any person, causes death to any person, shall be imprisoned for any term of years or for life, fined under this title or both. Okay, so I don't know what's so broad about that. I think it needs to be broader. When you're dealing with these Mickey Fickies, they will sit up here and, make lynching about swinging from the trees. Lynching is all of what you see happening to us current day. It's not just hanging us from trees. And now they've gotten so clever that, more recent hangings, they're claiming that we put ourselves up in these trees and pulled down our own pants and, hung ourselves. They call it suicide. So all the ways in which they execute us should be included. That to me would be being broad. Now he wants to talk about qualified immunity. Well, they've already got HR 1280. That's George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021. This is opposed to the bill enhances existing enforcement mechanisms to remedy violations by law enforcement. Among other things, it does the following. Lowers the criminal intent standard from willful to knowing or reckless to convict a law enforcement officer for misconduct in a federal prosecution. Limits qualified immunity as a defense to liability in a private civil action against a law enforcement officer, and grants administrative subpoena power to the DOJ in pattern or practice investigations. I don't want it to limit qualified immunity. I want it to end qualified immunity. How in the world do these officers get away for lynching and executing us under qualified immunity? I'm talking about those of us who are unarmed. It should end it. It should totally upend qualified immunity if they execute a Black man, woman, or child who is unarmed. They clearly know how not to execute their own with weapons. They get taken alive. So, one excuse after another to keep this bullshiggity going. That's what they're doing. So I want to go now to this stand your ground nonsense, which, as the gentleman shared in my earlier video, doesn't apply to freedmen. That's for white folks, maybe immigrants. But freedmen don't prevail generally when it comes to standing our ground. And yet we must get our tools. We must get our tools. It's open season with no protections and no friends. So let me stop sharing this and start to share this other one so I can get into a little bit of this bull down here with Desantis. Basically, they're going to start making it. You're going to get off scot-free for being a Kyle Rittencracker, executing Black people, whether we're protesting for Black Lives to Matter, or whether we're just, going about our day being Black. They're trying to set the stage where they can't get life sentences for taking our lives, while the federal government holds up the EMMITT Anti-Lynching Act, holds up the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We have no protections. And this will continue to happen until it is outlawed. Until executing and lynching us is outlawed, this will continue to happen. So let me share my screen. Welcome to the live. I don't see you in Facebook, and I don't see you in Twitter. So welcome. This is oh. Okay, so let's do this one. Let me come back over here. Oh, that's too little. I'm trying to get the right size. Oh, that ain't it. Okay, let me just put it up there like that so y'all can see me on this one. So here we go. I'm going to copy and paste this in another browser so I can read it while the title stays put. So, stand your ground in Florida. Here we go. Oh, God, this could be expanded under Desantis anti-mob proposal. The governor draft legislation seeks to clamp down on violence and property damage during unrest, but critics fear it would only fuel racial unrest and violence, not dampen it. Okay, so we all know that during the Black Lives Matter protests, these white folks was dressing up in black, wreaking havoc during the protest. And now Kyle Rittencracker has been acquitted of all charges for executing his own, who were unarmed. And now between the Missouri Bill 666 and now the expansion of Stand Your Ground, they're literally setting the stage to be able to come to a protest like the one I showed you earlier in the name of Amir Locke. May he rest in power. They literally can pull up to something like that if this kind of BS passes, which is where we get involved. We've got to shut this down. We've got to learn when these bills go to the floor for a vote, and we have got to flood those phone lines akin to how the Asians did when it came time to restore our affirmative action under Prop 16 that Freedman Ward Connerly decimated with Prop 209. We've got to get active and get this stuff. We've got to dead it. It's going to be on us to be everywhere until, we grow in these different spaces where they're trying to set the stage in terms of the grassroots. We need grassroots down there, in Missouri to upend this. I got to make a call. I got a couple people down there. We got to make sure they upend this. And we've got to do the same wherever they're trying to legislate our ethno-genocide. We've got to get active. Otherwise, we are setting up the end of freedmen lineage in this country. Because the Biden administration is flooding the country with immigrants and refugees alike. And so with these kind of bills, we're being squeezed in the middle to our own peril. And we keep voting for this to our own peril. So what we've got to do is vote for closed border candidates and at the same time show up legislatively so that when these bills show up for a vote, we can, as a collective, be a resounding no and defeat these glacier donkeys. Okay, Florida Governor Ron Desantis wants to amend the state stand your ground law in a proposal that would expand one of the broadest laws of its kind in the country, worrying critics who say it could empower people to use violence during chaotic, intense confrontations at protests. Oh, that's what they're setting the stage for. Kyle Rittenhouse was practice. Now they're trying to legislate and make it law to get away with murder of freedmen, of blacks, freedmen in particular, because these protests aren't being driven through the white neighborhoods and through the neighborhoods of black immigrants who are 1,000 times more wealthy. This is coming through the hoods that they intend to gentrify. That's where you can find the protests. That's where you can find the people. That's where you can find the race soldiers executing us with impunity. So the move is part of Desantis' anti-mob draft legislation, which would target people accused of illegal acts during riots and looting. So why isn't everybody who attended the insurrection at the Capitol up under the jail? Desantis, a Republican, presented his aggressive agenda in response to the months of large-scale racial justice protests across the country, which at times flared into violent clashes. Excuse me. I only know of 2 large-scale racial justice protests. Black Lives Matter being the biggest all over the country and all over the globe. The other was the insurrection in Washington. None of this happened in Florida. And if there was any violence, it was white folks coming over there to cut the fool, to try to blame us for the looting and the property damage. Now they want to justify executing us for fighting for our own lives. His proposal will only fuel racial unrest and violence, not dampen it, said State Senator Randolph Bracy, a Democrat whose district includes part of Orange County. DeSantis is treating the law as a playbook for his next election, which is reckless and irresponsible. The draft legislation, that's what's happening right now. Our segregationist in chief has earmarked, I want to say $350 billion to the race soldiers to execute us with immunity in our own neighborhoods. He's trying to, bring out what's the word I'm looking for? He's trying to, pretend to the country that the Democrats, and in fact it's true, it's no pretense, are tougher on crime than the Republicans. Now they're in a pissing match as to who is tougher on blacks. Who can execute the most blacks? They're in a pissing match over that between the race soldiers and the deputized. Who's going to win with running the ethno-genocide of freedmen on their platform? Which one of them can get that done? So they're in a pissing match to see which one of them can convince the people that they're going to be tougher on freedmen. Freedmen blacks in particular, because we're the poorest. We are the bottom caste. We are actually in the fight of our lives to prevent from becoming the permanent undercaste, bottom caste in the country our ancestors built with their lives. They've neutralized us economically. Now they're coming for that vote, but that vote is split. The only real votes that the Democrats can rely on are the refugees and immigrants earning under $50,000 a year, because their strategy is once they make $50K or greater, they're voting Republican. So that's why you see this influx of poor refugees and immigrants. Not the black ones, though. Okay? So they're in a pissing match over this. The draft legislation, which was provided to some lawmakers in late September, was first reported by the Miami Herald and the Tampa Bay Times this week. Florida's self-defense law would be updated to include looting, criminal mischief, and arson that results in the interruption or impairment of a business operation as justifications for using physical force, including lethal options against a person. Looting means committing burglary within 500 feet of a violent or disorderly assembly, according to the draft legislation, which was shared with NBC News. Currently, the law permits use of force during the commissions of several types of felonies, including murder, robbery, sexual battery, and aggravated assault. In general, Floridians can defend themselves with deadly force if they believe they are in imminent danger or death, and not only when they are inside their homes. The person being threatened is not required to try to flee. At least 24 other states do not demand that people retreat from their attackers if they are lawfully allowed to be at a location such as their private residence, their business, or public space. The potential use of stand your ground as a defense drew national attention to cases in Florida, from the fatal shooting of Trayvon Martin, a black teenager, in 2012, to that of Marquise McLaughlin, a black father of 3, who was killed in a convenience store parking lot in 2018. If prosecutors decide to charge someone who uses deadly force, the person can raise a stand your ground defense during a pretrial hearing before a judge. If the person is successful, he or she is granted immunity from prosecution. Immunity is not given to someone who uses force against a police officer in the line of duty. The law has drawn criticism in cases in which the circumstances surrounding the need for lethal force are in doubt, such as who started the confrontation and who escalated it with violence or the threat of deadly violence. Hello, Kyle Rittencracker, whose life goes on unimpeded. Kenneth Nunn, a law professor at the University of Florida and assistant director of its Criminal Justice Center, said that explicitly linking stand your ground to what happens at demonstrations is reactionary to extreme. Like the stand your ground law, generally it reduces public safety in exchange for a crass political attempt to pit one segment of the population against another, Nunn said. Our criminal laws should be designed to reduce conflict and, when conflict takes place, to make sure that the least amount of harm is done. This proposal does just the opposite. Desantis previewed previewed his proposal legislation in September after a wave of national demonstrations that followed the death of George Floyd. No, the execution of George Floyd. We need to do more in terms of a strong legislative response, so we do not always have to play whack-a-mole anytime you have situations like this develop, Desantis said at the time. Recently in our country, we have seen attacks on law enforcement. We've seen disorder and tumult in many cities, he added. Desantis activated the National Guard in response to some of the earlier protests in Florida, which included multiple arrests and police use of tear gas on protesters. I didn't see any of that happening at the insurrection at the Capitol. Some state lawmakers are questioning his motive for pursuing his anti-mob legislation, saying it echoes much of the law and order rhetoric from President Donald Trump. The proposed legislation would also stiffen criminal penalties for those accused of participating in violent or disorderly assemblies, making it a third-degree felony to throw an object that hits someone or to block traffic during an unlawful protest. Oh, but it's okay for them to execute us with immunity. Even the deputized. You can execute me, but I can't throw nothing at you. Wow. Let me keep going. A driver who unintentionally causes injury or death to a person who obstructs traffic might also be immune from liability under the proposed law. The Florida Police Chiefs Association, which represents more than 900 of the state's top law enforcement executives, declined to comment on the proposal, but its president, Satellite Beach Police Chief Jeff Pearson, has previously commended Desantis for announcing measures that are urgently needed to protect the lives and property of every Floridian. You see how you have to go get your power tools, family, and you've got to train in your power tools? Violent protests endanger lives and threaten the rights of every other citizen we are sworn to protect, Pearson said in September. While the legislature remains firmly under Republican control after the election, it's unclear whether Desantis' draft legislation will find a sponsor for next year's session or advance as written. Neither DeSantis' office nor the office of Republican leaders and related judiciary and criminal justice committees immediately responded to requests for comment. Okay, so family, I'm pretty much done with that article. I am just showing you, family, that these are the spaces where the grassroots in the reparations movement need to infiltrate. Once this kind of bullshiggity gets to the floor, we've got to be there to vote no against these things and stop it in its tracks all over the country. So I'm at 3:50. So before I let you go, I just want to touch on a couple of other cases that I'm hotter than fish grease about. Hold on one second. Welcome to the live, one and all. Please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Let's see here. So I want to talk about the EMMITT case being closed and Kendrick Johnson before I pray us out. Hopefully my daughter won't call. I'm going to make these I'm going to try to make these brief so we can get through both of them. This was a heavy show, heavy broadcast rather. It's not really a show. It's, yeah, this was a lot. I should have broken this up in segments, but I remember to do so as I move forward. This week, trying to bring you more Freedmen news. Okay, so let me see. Where's that article? Okay, so let's go here. Since, well, let me see. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to go to this one first because I can't see the one on this Carolyn chick that I wanted to show you. I think it was a video actually. Okay, let's go to this one. Oh, Lord have mercy. Let me pull it up in another screen. Hope y'all can see that. Let me see here. So many of you probably know about this young teen who was found. Hold on. What is this thing doing? No. Oh, this gets on my last nerve. Let me go over here and read it. It's trying to make me subscribe, and I don't choose to on the other one. So this one will be scrolling. So many of you already know about the Georgia teen that was found in the gym mat. Well, they closed the case yet again, claiming it was a weird accident. 8 years after Kendrick Johnson, 17 years old, was found upside down in a large mat in his high school gym, the Lowndes County Sheriff decided to reopen the case. Okay. So the death of a Black teenager whose body was found upside down in a rolled up gym mat at his Georgia high school in 2013 was an accident, the local sheriff announced this week. This is January 27, 2022. Affirming a previous investigation's finding that there was no evidence of foul play. The teenager, Kendrick Johnson, 17, listen to this bull-shiggity glacier donkey of a reason they gave. He most likely crawled headfirst into the mat to retrieve a pair of sneakers that he had thrown inside earlier and became trapped. Oh my God. A 17-year-old crawls inside a gym mat to get some sneakers and gets trapped. Sheriff Ashley Polk of Lowndes County said, "It's a weird accident," he said on Thursday, one day after he had released a 16-page report that detailed his findings and echoed the ruling made by a previous sheriff in 2013. For years, the case has confounded residents in Valdosta, Georgia, a city of about 56,000 in southern Georgia. It inspired a 2021 documentary questioning the findings of law enforcement officials and prompted calls for murder charges by Kendrick's relatives who believe he was killed by 2 white students at Lowndes High School. Now, see, that sounds more reasonable. Federal prosecutors began reviewing the case in 2013 after the family requested a separate investigation. The federal investigation focused on the 2 students and another person, according to Sheriff Polk's report. In 2016, federal prosecutors said that to bring a case to trial, they would have to show 2 things: that Kendrick had been killed and that the killing had been motivated by racial animus. There was insufficient evidence, they claimed, to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone or some group of people willfully violated Kendrick Johnson's civil rights or committed any other prosecutable federal crime. Prosecutors said in a statement announcing that the Justice Department was closing its case. Sheriff Polk said on Thursday that there was no evidence to show that anyone else was responsible for Kendrick's death. One of the students investigated by prosecutors was on a bus headed to a wrestling match at the same time that Kendrick went into the gym, according to his report. Footage from camera at Cameras at the high school showed that Kendrick did not cross paths with either of the two other people in the federal investigation at any point on January 10th, 2013, the day he died, the report said. Excuse me, I don't know if anyone recalls, but wasn't that footage tampered with? Wasn't a portion of that footage missing? Back to the text. At 1:27 that day, camera footage showed Kendrick walking by himself into the gym toward the bleachers where gym mats were rolled and stored vertically. A teacher and students found his body the next morning. So my question is, why weren't the cameras showing him crawling into the mat to pick up a pair of shoes he had left inside a very, very tight mat? How could a whole 17-year-old fit inside of a rolled mat and not be able to get out? These gym mats were rolled and stored vertically. So he's small enough to fit through a rolled mat for some sneakers he had left in there the day prior. But he's not small enough to crawl out. Okay. Oh. Sheriff Polk said he had examined 17 boxes of evidence provided by prosecutors and investigators. I don't know why you got camera footage and you don't have camera footage of what you allege as a weird accident, including grand jury testimony. The evidence does not produce anything to prove any criminal act by anyone that would have resulted in the death of Kendrick Johnson, Sheriff Polk's report said. Kendrick's father, Kenneth Johnson, said he still believed that someone had killed his son, a popular athlete at Lowndes High and the youngest of 5 siblings. Mr. Johnson, 53, said that a forensic pathologist hired by the family, William R. Anderson, had found that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the right side of the boy's neck near the jaw. I repeat. His father said a forensic pathologist hired by the family, William R. Anderson was his name, had found that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the right side of the boy's neck near the jaw. The truth is the truth, Mr. Johnson said. You can't make an accident out of a murder. The findings of Mr. Anderson's autopsy, conducted 5 months after Kendrick's death, contradicted the conclusions of the medical examiner at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, who in 2013 issued an autopsy report that determined the cause of death was positional asphyxia, suggesting that Kendrick had become trapped upside down in the rolled up mat and had suffocated. A whole athletic 17-year-old boy crawled into a vertical mat for sneakers he had left the day before, and they closed the investigation. Nothing to see here. Sheriff Polk said the conflicting autopsy reports were complicated by a third autopsy conducted by the Office of the Armed Forces Medical Examiner in 2014. That report also ruled the death accidental and caused by asphyxiation, but was later amended to say the cause of death was undetermined. Even after the federal investigation, questions about Kendrick's death persisted in Valdosta. In 2016, Sheriff Polk, who had retired the year before Kendrick died, decided to run again for his old seat. He said that on the campaign trail, he had been approached several times by Black voters who wanted him to look at the case again. I felt that I should look at this, he said. Plus, I wanted to know for myself. But Sheriff Polk, 76, said that as he had reviewed the federal government's documents, it appeared that prosecutors had become determined to charge the 2 students. He described their investigation as a witch hunt and said email correspondence between prosecutors showed they had been feeling pressure to get results. A spokeswoman for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Georgia declined to comment and referred questions to the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio, which took over the case. According to a wrongful death lawsuit filed by Kendrick's family, the two students... okay. Hi, Pumpkin.
Hey.
Okay, where are you?
I'm at school.
Okay, is that where you're gonna be?
Thank you.
Baby, I'm on a live. I can't talk. I'll be right there.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Well, y'all, that's my time. I will get into the Carolyn Dunham, I think that's her name, because they have essentially closed her case as well, claiming there's nothing to see. And I've got some comments about that, family. I thank you so much for tuning in. Here we go with the darn trolls. Good Lord. I am so sick of them. I can't stand it. Thank you all for joining the live. I do want to share with you, as I set us up, to bid you adieu for today, that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever Freedmen and its allies are, God truly is, because, family, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Yes, you are. And with that being said, family, I want to bid you a great evening until I can sneak over here and meet up with you again, which I pray will be sooner than later. I'm definitely going to try to get to you more often, because the puckery is just all too real, family. It just continues, and it's got to be reported on. You have to understand that we've got to weaponize our vote. Consider voting closed border candidates. This is not a personality contest. It's not about who's got an agenda. This is about us sending a strong message to the Democrats that we're not going to continue to show up to these polls and vote you into office as you are complicit in plans to ethno-genocide us as an entire lineage. Consider closed border candidates. You must. Know that I love you, Black and strong. Peace, family. Love and reparations.